Deception, lies, omissions, front activities, cover up flaws or unusual aspects of the group's doctrine, leadership, and history. Some deceptions will be revealed later when a member is ready. What do you think?
I'm not sure. I'm just going through.
What do you think about the parents who are going to school boards and saying that I've learned from my child that the teacher is talking to them about gender, but then also telling them that if they want to go by a different name or a different gender, that the teacher will not tell the parent, and that secrets will be kept at school so that the parents can't interfere with the child's true expression of their self.
Do the parents of a first grade girl have a right to know if teachers and administrators at her school are encouraging her to believe that she's really a boy trapped in a girl's body? This seems like a simple question with an obvious answer. The answer is yes. Yes, of course, the parents of a minor should at the very least know if their kid's school is influencing them toward making such a life-altering choice. The Madison Metropolitan School District, a taxpayer-funded and government-run public education system, decided in 2018 that students of any age could take on a transgender identity with the school's assistance, and without parents' knowledge or consent. The district's policy requires that all teachers not only affirm any gender identity a child of any age requests, but actively conceal it from parents. Madison's policy even directs teachers to keep parents in the dark by using their child's birth name and pronouns whenever the parents are nearby. Think about that. If 7-year-old Lily decides that she is really Luther, her teachers must call her Luther, except when Lily's parents come in for a parent-teacher conference or school activity. It should go without saying that parents should never be lied to about what is going on with their own children. But all this took a distant second place to Madison Public School District's stated goal: to disrupt the gender binary. In May 2019, one of the schools in the district held an assembly where kindergartners through 5th graders were made to watch a video of one of their teachers. In the video, the teacher read a book that says things like, "Are you a boy or a girl? How can you be both? Some days I am both. Some days I am neither. Most days, I am everything in between." Then came the big reveal. The teacher, 6 and 7-year-olds were told, now identifies as the opposite sex. Under the school policy, disrupting the gender binary also means leaving it up to teachers and minor children whether or not the parents deserve to be included in developing a gender support plan. And to keep parents as in the dark as possible, the policy instructed teachers to file the plan in their own confidential records, not in student records, which parents have a legal right to see.
Would that fall under deception? Is that something that you think is part of the community, or are these lone wolf activists?
I think it is part of the community. Because it's that same feeling that anyone who isn't trans isn't going to get it. So they're acting from that feeling like they're protecting the child. Obviously, I don't think that they're protecting the child. I think that they're interfering with the family relation by lying and keeping that from parents. But
does that require a teacher to do that? I think I've heard a couple of other detransitioners say that part of the Tumblr discourse was advising people that they were going to have to lie to their family and hide that they were going down that pathway for a period of time.
Yeah. And actually, as I brought up before, a lot of people are encouraged to lie to their professionals as well. And you could also argue that transition itself is a form of deception. Just the entire thing, living in the opposite sex role, is a form of deception. And I think that it will always be seen as a form of deception to some degree. No one really thinks that it is deception. I think maybe they do subconsciously, but someone like, for me, living as a trans man, I didn't think I was deceiving anyone. But in reality, I was still a female person who is perceived as a man. So it is a form of deception. But in my head, it wasn't me deceiving people. It was me like living my truth.
Depending on what level of analysis you want to give to it, I think if people start from a position of objective reality, and use that to root their definitions in, then they would see the claim that trans women are women or trans men are men is a lie from a foundational perspective of the beliefs. And so that lie then serves as the pillar upon which everything else is built. And so they would say that there's deception at the root of it. Certainly it depends on how you want to conceptualize and frame that. And so people would understandably have different ways of seeing that.
One of the criticisms I had as I was looking back on, particularly like the informed consent process, is one of my criticisms was that nobody ever told me, and I've talked about how I don't believe in gender identity anymore. No one ever told me that the science doesn't really support gender identity. It hasn't really established brain sex as a thing. It hasn't established it as a thing. And I feel like someone should have told me that at some point along the way. So either a lie or an omission. I think that was one of the bigger ones for me, is that should have been really clear. At some point, someone should have said, the evidence isn't actually there, but if you want to go ahead, then go ahead. But no one even said that.
That's interesting, because I feel like my experience discussing this with people, as well as observing other discussions, is that people will say the opposite. They'll say the science is settled, that this is a thing. The naive backwater person who thinks that biology and sex are the reason for many of the differences in our society, you're just a troglodyte who isn't up to date with the current understanding of science, that they're completely decoupled because gender is purely a social construct. And I think if you don't research into these things and you just interpret the confidence with which these statements are made as proof of their validity, then you can say, oh gosh, I was mistaken. I guess I didn't understand this. And without reading anymore, you just kind of accept those assertions, and then you start to reconceptualize how you should engage those subjects.
Yeah. And I think that counts as one of the lies, is people saying that the science is settled over and over, or even saying that there's a baseline standard of care for transgender health, because there isn't. There's the WPATH standards, and they're not backed by like a systematic review. So they're not very good standards by an objective measure. They're not very high quality. They're not backed by really robust scientific evidence. So.
And I think it feels like there's a battle being waged on that front, because there's evidence that may justify all of these things, but how strong is that evidence? Is that evidence based on randomized, double-blinded, controlled studies, which are a strong form of evidence, or are they based on anecdotal or meta-analyses, which are considered weaker forms of evidence? And so not all recommendations are the same. But you don't have to go through that level of analysis if you're an activist trying to put somebody in their place. You simply throw a bunch of links at them and say, see, there's proof. And the thing is, it's hard even for a trained physician to go through that stuff and understand whether or not some of those recommendations may be ideologically driven or not. And certainly just because something comes from a medical authority establishment does not mean that it may not have been affected by ideology. And that's what we're trying to tease out.
Yeah.
All right. So deception, how strong a footprint does it leave on the trans community and on your experience?
I think it's severe.
Okay.